All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Unicorn Connector Show, where we talk about relationships, revenue, and referrals. And today is all about relationships, connecting authentically, and getting out of your shell to become a better connector. So I'm incredibly excited for today's show because we have Steve Spiro on with us, who is known as a master connector and even has his own LinkedIn Live called the Master Connector Show. He's a mentor and consultant, president of Spiro Global Inc., and he's passionate about inspiring people in uplifting ways with a positive outlook on life. After overcoming many obstacles, he's gone from being introverted to an outgoing go giver, and I can't wait to dig in with him today. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Steve Spiro. Welcome to the show, Steve. Go ahead and say hello. Tell us a little
What's
bit about
going on,
yourself.
Daniel? How you doing? How you doing, guys? Hey, Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and direct. I have to start that way, of course, but it's a blessing to be on here with you and excited. And it's interesting. You said he's an outgoing guy. I don't know about that. I'm still an introvert, but maybe an extroverted introvert, perhaps. Or I definitely push myself to be more out there. So, but thank you for the kind words, and I appreciate the introduction. When you were at times, I was like, "Who's he talking about?" But I appreciate that, Daniel. It's really an honor to be on with you, sir.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here. And for those of you watching live, before we kind of dig in here, please let us know where you're watching from. This is meant to be interactive. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get them answered for you. Yeah, speaking of, Steve, where are you located?
So I am hailing from Stamford, Connecticut, so the northeast of the states. Right here across from my place, we've got a beautiful view of the water, and yeah, this time of year is my favorite time, the springtime. Get to enjoy the outside, and it's awesome.
That's great. I love that, and it was awesome because not we had so many things that we hit it off with. I mean, and you just said introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert. Who knows? I recently identified in that way. I'm going to be in Stanford here pretty soon, so hopefully we can get together while that happens.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's just awesome. Like so many things. You talk about kind of breaking out of your shell, and that's something that really resonates with me. I was kind of trapped for a long time, and I would agree, maybe I'm not necessarily outgoing, but I mean, you came on this with a bang, so that's hard to say you're not outgoing in some way or another. So
I bring up my voice for the occasion, I guess, right? I manufacture whatever I have to manufacture. That's a guess, what you know. But you're an introvert when you're done being around people, you're spent, right? When you're an extrovert, you're energized after being with people. So I'm definitely spent. I earn my pillow when I go to bed at night after being with people virtually or in person. Definitely.
awesome. So I'm curious, you bring up being in person or virtual. Do you have like a preference? Do you prefer meeting in person or virtual?
I mean, I think there's a value to both, right? The advantage to being in person is I really believe you can connect more effectively. I've done quite a few speaking engagements virtually, and I've done some, in person. And I really feel there's an audience connection when you're in person, for sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
I've created some amazing relationships virtually, but there's just something better, more just effective about breaking bread with somebody or having an actual cup of coffee and looking in their eye. And it's just a different feeling. So if I had to err between one or the other, preference is in person, but there's also the great value in the efficiency of
Mm-hmm.
not having to drive, depending upon where you're having coffee, 20, 25 minutes, getting the coffee, the time, and then, another 20, 25 minutes. It could be an hour and a half or more, depending upon, how long. And, a lot of times since you're in person, there's a tendency to not be regimented, because, we live in this back to back to back world on Zoom, right? So everyone knows you got to, you probably have a meeting right after this. And, so there's that, but when you're in person, you're not dealing with that. So there is a definitely more of a time commitment, and there's an efficiency to being virtual. But I prefer in person because I really feel like there's a true connection that way. People can feel you, more.
Right.
And, you could shake someone's hand and, maybe put your arm, your hand on their shoulder or on their elbow and just, there's something that, the power of that handshake, right? You could see if this person you could judging is not the right word. You could kind of get a feel for the character through,
Yeah.
handshake and eye contact. And it's harder to get that when you're, virtual like this.
Absolutely. It's almost impossible to get that legitimate eye contact when you are virtual, right?
Yeah.
Because if you are kind of making it, you're usually looking in the camera, right?
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
if a lot of the time people like somebody's looking at you when they're like seriously focused on like one spot in the screen, right?
Right.
But it doesn't feel like it. Right?
Right.
And
Because the
so
camera's usually a little bit up from the screen itself, and there's a tendency. I mean, I could look at this inanimate object right now. I'm looking at the camera right now, but it's really weird just to keep looking at this camera and not look at you, Daniel.
right.
You know?
Yeah. Yep. I definitely understand. Well, cool. So I'm curious, the other thing that you've mentioned, I've heard multiple times in some of your awesome videos that you've got, that you really like to focus on making or connecting with 3 new people every day. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. So, part of my story and my journey, right? And and I'll share a little bit so this way there's some context to that. Don't know if I'm stealing your thunder in the direction of this conversation, but I was, born in the Bronx, my, entrepreneurial background, but shy and introverted, picked on, bullied, learning disabled, dyslexic. And had like one friend growing up, my best friend. I mean, I had some acquaintances, people that I hung out with, but they weren't really friends. Had a best friend, a guy named Michael. He moves away. It was still from one part of the Bronx to the other. I lived in the Kingsbridge Road area of the Bronx. Anyone from the New York area might know that. Not quite South Bronx, just a little north of the Bronx, but not the greatest of area. He moved to Riverdale. Okay, it's a little more upscale. They don't call it the Bronx, even though it's technically the Bronx. And it was probably so. I took my bike. I rode my bike to see him, and it was a good probably hour drive and or ride. And it didn't seem like he cared to him. And so we had that one get together, and then that was it. It just didn't happen again, and that was it. I mean, so I didn't have friends, and I wound up going to a high school where I commuted into the city. So it was a high school of art and design where everybody was from the boroughs and it wasn't like the typical high school experience where you have, you're in a community where everyone grew up in. It was not like that. So I commuted in, commuted out, took the subway. I mean, just a different experience as a high school person. And I really didn't develop a lot of connections there because it was, you're in and out, right? It's not like you're hanging out with people. And it just when school was done, you just went home on the subway. And I also went to college, and I didn't really think about this because it just is the way it all kind of came about. But I commuted into college as well. I know there's the college experience typically where there's dormitories and there's all these things you deal with, the keg parties and all these crazy. I didn't have any of that, right? I commuted into college, same thing. Took the subway in, Metro North in. And so no connection in my life. And so when I got into the martial arts, right at 20, I was already kind of in a shell in a box. And, I like the idea of the martial arts because it got me around people. But a lot of the philosophy in the martial arts was show no pain and don't show your emotion. And I had been hurt, a lot of rejection in my life. And that was great. So I was like, okay, this is perfect. And so for years into my adulthood, that's how I lived. And I obviously got married and, but still kind of in a box. And eventually in the advertising industry, I met a gentleman who was a very successful entrepreneur. I met him through a good friend that I work with. I actually put a post out recently. If you're watching this, type in hashtag Guinness if you would, and then make sure to connect with me because Guinness is me. I know this is being recorded right around a few days after St. Patrick's Day. So it wasn't on St. Patrick's Day, but I was sent to Ireland. I was working on Guinness beer, and his name is Brian, and I memorialized him again. I've done this before in a post with a pint of Guinness. And on that plane ride, he's the one who was telling me about this gentleman, and he made a connection, opened a door for me, and this gentleman became a mentor to me. And as you said, he challenged me to meet three strangers every single day. It's and it just was so outside of my comfort zone. I mean, not to mention, if you're from the New York area, to me, like you talk to strangers, they're going to shoot you. I mean, that's the mentality, right? Or if you're a young person, you're going to be kidnapped if you talk to strangers. So there was this protective shell that that you had. Not to mention that my normal protective shell, plus that New Yorker edge. But it was interesting, and I found that as I started to do it, it actually wasn't as hard and awkward as it sounded initially. As I got more comfortable, and it was great, and I felt myself really connecting with people. And over time, right, initially it was very awkward, and I had some crazy situations. People thought I was hitting on them and all sorts of crazy stuff. So I started to make sure that when I met somebody that I mentioned inadvertently that my wife this or my wife that, so they knew I was you know nothing fun, no money monkey business going on there. But so I just started doing it, and it became a pretty incredible. And as COVID hit, that shifted because I wasn't going out, and if I was going out, we're masked up, and I found it extremely hard to meet strangers when you're with a mask on. It just was really hard. And not to mention there was these feelings like especially you're thick of COVID, you were like you want to avoid people, right? That 6 foot distance and all that, and it was awkward. So I started to shift that same mentality to LinkedIn, and use connecting with LinkedIn as a way to kind of fulfill that mission. And I sent out a lot of connect requests and connect with people in a very organic but strategic way. I'm not trying to. There's no agenda either way. I mean, there's never been an agenda, but I do that every day. And whether it's a combination of meeting people out and about today, as well as LinkedIn today, I think it's been amazing. And I probably average, a dozen or so or more connect calls every single week. And you and I, Daniel, are a result of that, right? And I've had some incredible relationships that I've been able to rebuild and through those random connections. I've got a good friend of mine, Dave Speranza, who, the one and only time I went to my nephew's football game up in Dutchess County, up in Poughkeepsie. The one time Dave and I were the only guys watching, and mostly moms watching the kids play. And I pull up in my Mercedes. I see him. He's dressed in a suit, and we had a connection. I think he was hoping to get maybe a new client because he's in the financial services industry. But we exchanged numbers, cards, whatever it was, I forget. And that has created. We've done some collaboration, and one of my dearest friends today. And I could give you numerous stories of people I've met at gas stations, at the gym, and I think people. There's still a few people that I probably have some if you dig really deep, there's probably some random things on Reddit or something about that. But yeah, I mean it's crazy because there's no agenda. I'm generally hoping to help you in some way, and I feel the more, and I know you have in the banner at the bottom, the more that I'm a go-giver, right? Big believer in that book. Bob Berg is awesome. He was on one of our guests on our show, and it's awesome that to do that, to be that go-giver and be others focused and not have an agenda. And so that's me. And I know it's hard for people to believe if you're a skeptical New Yorker or just skeptical in general, or just there's always like, okay, what's the angle? Okay, well, no angle here. Okay, I know I have a vowel at the end of my name. Most people think I'm Italian. I'm not. But my good friend who's Italian said, he said this. He said, "What's the difference? But what's the shortest distance between point A and point B, right?" And the answer is a straight line. He said, "Unless you're Italian, there's always an angle, right?" And that was his joke. I'm not, that was an Italian guy telling me a joke. Okay. But anyway, no angle. Okay. And I found the more I became others focused, the better I felt about myself. The more I stayed within myself, the more it might have felt comfortable, but I was uncomfortable. My motto is there's danger in the comfort zone. So anyway, I threw a lot at you there, but I just wanted to give a little flavor to that answer because it's not just I meet three strangers, but I wanted to give you the why behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I appreciate that. I probably should have started with asking you, about your doing this master connector, but you nailed it on the head. And so I love what you said about the whole go giver part of this, and just the way that you talk about connecting without an agenda, just to connect and get to know people. And it's a great way to for people who aren't familiar with doing that, who don't do it very often. It's a great way to kind of get out of your comfort zone, right? And so when it comes to the go giver, and if Bob ends up watching this, he's going to love all the talk about his book. But it really sounds like you do focus on, both value and the authenticity part of, what they talk about in that book. And so I'm curious, just to kind of dig in a little bit more on that. What does it mean to you to really connect authentically? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many directions we can go on that one, right? But to me, and again, I'll tell you a story. So I was wounded. I got to say, I was wounded. I was broken. I had more hangups than the phone company, right? And and when you're wounded, there's a tendency to be inward focused and be protective and be in a shell, right? And the more that you share, the more exposed you are, right? And so that was me for many years. But I also found myself when I got around people that were successful or they looked more handsome than me, or they were better shape than me, or they were more outgoing than me, or a better communicator than me. I always played the comparison game and I always lost. And it was really, really hard for me. It really was. And, I just always felt like I was second best. And so what happened was, and eventually we'll be able, I'll do a TEDx talk on this, and this is becoming my signature talk, which is in our weakness there's power. And I found that when you lead with your authentic self and you lead with those weaknesses and the vulnerabilities, aka Brene Brown, right? She did a TEDx on it and wrote books on it. When you lead with those vulnerabilities and share some of those things, people are drawn to it and they open up and they see you as being real and not some fake person. I think right now the generation that we're, this generation, I'll just say it like that, not to use ages or anything, but is big on the, is this person be authentic? Because they're seeing a lot and nobody's stupid. You see these people on social media and they're showing their best life, which is typically, maybe 2% of their real life, right? Their trip to Cancun or wherever they went to, and it's great. Meanwhile, they probably leveraged it on a credit card and they're in debt, and that's not their life, but it's their life for that moment. But they make you feel like that this is their life, and or they're these motivational gurus, and they're not what they really say they are. And listen, when I started talking about being the master connector, I mean, that was a little lofty, right? But there's at least something, I can base that on, right? And it's not like a major stretch. Like I'm not I'm not trying to be this great guru. Meanwhile, I'm homeless and have no job. That's a stretch, right? I'm not saying anyone that's putting out social media stuff is that to that degree. I'm just using an exaggeration. So back to authenticity. And so when I would lead with my weaknesses and talk about some of the things like being shy and introverted, like I mentioned earlier, and, the things that I've spoken about, being bullied and all those, people start to open up and maybe they share some of the things they've gone through. And now the connection is super, super powerful, right? It's beyond, you know, I won't say despise, but it's borderline of despise. I call it the what do you do dance when you get on a connect call and people want to tell you, so what do you do? And what do you do? And like, can we just talk about our stories for a moment? Can we let the kids, play in the sandbox a little bit and kind of get to know each other before we get right to business? I mean, really? I mean, like people do business with people they know, like, and trust. You start with the business stuff. How are they going to get to know you and like you before they be ready to do business with you? So I like to start with the story and start to talk about things that I've gone through. And it's a lot better and more effective if you've kind of overcome some of those challenges. Although, like I said and shared earlier in this episode, right? I'm still introverted, right? So it's not like I overcome that. That's part of my character. So being able to connect with people became powerful for me, and the connections were powerful. The other thing that it did for me is it made me powerfully confident. Now, instead of having to protect and kind of like be kind of closed up and okay, what if they find out? Now I'm an open book. I'm transparent, and I'm going to lead with it. And so now it's not a matter of I don't care, but when you're at a place where you don't care, so to speak, um, and I don't mean care about people, about what people think of you per se. Right now, you could be confident. And so, a quick story: I was dealing with this stuff, and this insecurity and the comparison game. And at one point, I went to a silent meditation retreat, and there was a good friend of mine that I respect a lot, and he had suggested it. He said he had been to a few of these, and it was the most bizarre experience I've ever been to. And I mean that in a good way. It was really cool. But I'm in this place, and it's you're not supposed to look at people in the eye. So you're walking past people, and you're looking away or looking down, and you're not supposed to talk at all. And and people are walking back and forth in these rooms. They're doing walking meditation, not just sitting, but they're walking, and they're not looking at each other, and they're not speaking to each other. And it's really strange, but it was really cool. And we did get to sit for lunch, but again, I don't think we were allowed to talk to each other. I have already forgotten.
That's so
But
crazy.
it was crazy. So but the first day, I'm doing my meditation thing, and I look out the window and I see a bird on a branch, and I don't know what came over me. It just said, you know what? It's okay. You're okay. I'm okay. We're okay. It's just okay. And that was a piece. There was a piece there too, but there was a piece of the puzzle for me. Just being okay with everything the way it is. And everyone's got their challenges, right? I heard it said, if you think you've got challenges, all right, well, why don't we go in a room of 15, 20 people, and everyone take their worst challenge and put it on a piece of paper and throw in a hat and grab that challenge, one of the challenges. You're going to want, give me my challenge back. Like, I want my challenge back, right? So people got their challenges, and yeah, they might look confident. They might be good looking, and they might have, confident swag, but you know what? What are they dealing with, right? So I've learned to just accept and say, you know what? I'm okay. They're okay. It's okay. So that was a big part of it for me, and not having to play that comparison game. So being good with who you are is so liberating, and it makes you powerful. For me, it's made me powerfully confident.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so I'm curious, you've talked or mentioned in a few different places about some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome. I'm curious, if you have any tools or, insights that you'd like to share about ways that you do overcome some of the obstacles you have dealt with in your life.
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. Well, so one thing I'll say is, I shared I'm learning disabled. I have dyslexia, I believe. I don't know for sure. I just know that my reading comprehension is not great. I mix up things when I read and write. So I've never been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have it. But
Okay.
the good news is that I was able to train my brain to be able to work around it. And what I did was, like, when I was like, my wife makes fun of me, but when we're doing, like, if we get the IKEA, type furniture where you have to build it from scratch with the instructions, I don't read the instructions. I sort of look at everything and I'm like, I figure it out. And occasionally I've had like one panel or two wrong and backwards or whatever, but I can't read the instructions. She's got to help me with the reading of it. But it's just that's yeah.
I don't
I
blame you.
learned
Those instructions are not, I mean, they're like drawn for a child, right? But they're impossible to understand.
they're impossible, especially for a guy who's learning disabled. I literally self-taught myself multiple programs, all the Microsoft suites. I self-taught myself. I self-taught myself Photoshop, Illustrator. The program today is InDesign, Quark back in the day, Quark Express. Canva now. I mean, I just self-taught myself, and I do it just through trial and error, and that's how I learn. And so my brain has become creative in problem solving, and okay, it figures out, okay, what have I got to do to get around these challenges? And I believe so that obstacle, that learning disability, has allowed me to be more creative and problem solving. So I believe that's been a great asset for me, and it's a learning lesson for me, in that a lot of times your biggest challenges can become your biggest strengths in different ways if you allow them to. So that's one thing that I've seen and learned. I mean, I was bullied, right? So I used that, and I got me through the martial arts, right? I made it all the way to 4th-degree black belt. I have in Goju karate, and I have a 1st degree in Jujitsu. And there were times where, I got my nose busted, my lips split open, my eyebrows split multiple times, multiple stitches, multiple trips to the emergency room, broken bones, all these crazy things. And I was up against, I'm 5'7", barely, not super, I'm a little chunky, but a not super big framed guy, and going up against these big behemoth guys. And it was intimidating. And so I would use, and nobody taught me this. I visualized the bullies back in college, not high school, not college, back growing up. Mm-hmm. And, just use that to get me through some of those challenges. So, some people are motivated by the dream and by I'm often motivated. I'm negatively motivated. I'll just say it like that. You tell me something can't be done, I'm going to prove you wrong. It's just, I have a chip on my shoulder, just the way I've been, maybe it's the Napoleon complex. I don't know what you want to label it. You don't have to label it, but it's something. And I just always feel like, so I've used those challenges as ways to prove, to myself and others in my own mind, and gotten through them. I've also learned that if you don't quit, you win. And, the one that just keeps at it, right? You see these fights on TV and movies where the guy just keeps getting up. You're like, man, like you got to respect that, right? And I may get knocked down. I definitely do, but I'm going to keep getting up and keep moving forward, right? The Rocky, I can't quote it, but I know the Rocky 5, or the one where he's an adult and he's talking to his son outside the restaurant or whatever it is. He does a great job of that monologue. It's not about if you get hit, you get knocked down. It's that you hit, you get knocked down, and you get up and you keep moving forward, because that's what winners do. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but so I learned how to take those obstacles and turn them into assets. And then the other thing I learned is just outworking everybody, not just outlasting, but outworking everybody. One of my favorite books, it's a great book, by Mike, I believe it's Gladwell wrote it, and it's called The Infinite Game. And great book. And he talks about how, it's not a matter of who wins or who loses in the corporate, God bless you, the corporate arena environment, but who outlasts the other. And yeah, it's a big thing. So being, having, one of my pillars, right? So we talked about some of them already, connecting authentically. These are pillars of my show, pillars of my talk, pillars of the book that I'll have coming out. Connecting authentically, being a go-giver and being others focused, being not self-focused, but others focused. The third is having the grit to overcome obstacles. That's a third pillar, and super important. And I believe it's if you can embrace that, you're unstoppable. I have I believe in higher power. I have a heavenly Father relationship with my heavenly Father, so I believe that I could lean on the strength of that relationship. But I believe that anybody can, if they are willing to outwork anyone. I mean, that's what got me. I mean, when I started the martial arts, this is a lesson I learned. I started when I was 20. So a lot of the guys I started with had already been training 4 or 5 years when they were younger. So I had that, and I'm very short-limbed, so not talented, older than you should be when you start the martial arts, not as limber. And when I started, there was a class, and there's probably, I don't know, 15, 20 people, and we lined up in rank order. So from the facing the front, the left side was the highest rank, and all the way to the far right was the brand new person, and I was the end, brand new. And when I joined, there was a guy named John who became my partner at my karate studio that we had back in Harrison, New York, Westchester. But John, when I joined, he had been training, I believe, at that point already around 8 or 10 years. He was just 3 months after I joined. He was going up for his black belt, and I got to see that black belt test. I was so impressed. I was like, man, this is such an elite organization of people. I need to be in that room, and so I just outworked everybody. When I was online, and our sensei, who was a drill instructor type, I mean, he was a big 6'5", 300-pound African-American guy, former football player, basketball, super fast, super strong. He was like, if you scratched your nose in the middle of class, give me 50 push-ups. I mean, just it was today, not acceptable the way things, we weren't allowed to drink water during class. You had to drink it after class. Before, it was just, you had to go to the bathroom, can't go. I mean, it was just, yeah. Along the lines of what you might hear about from Navy SEAL kind of stuff, not quite as extreme, but anyway, so we, he would go up and down the class, and as he went all the way to the other end, and we were doing these basic moves, we were in what's called a horse stance, sitting in a deep squatting position, and doing our moves. They're called Kihon, which is basic. And most of the guys to my left and my right were dogging it. They were like, kind of, because he wasn't close by, he couldn't see them, so they were just sort of taking it easy. But I don't know what got into me. I'm gonna like go all out, and I did. And in doing that, I fell in love with myself. I know that may sound funny, but I earned my self-respect. I was like, nobody's doing what I'm doing. And here's the end of the story. Well, the part of the story I wanted to get to. When I backed away from martial arts, by the way, I made black belt in 3.5 years. It typically took people in my class, in our school, to take 10 years to make it. It took me 3.5. I just outworked everybody, and I did more than anyone. And when I backed away, I had passed everyone in that class except for John. John, when I backed away from it, he was at 5th degree black belt. I was at 4th degree. So I'd caught up by 1 rank to him and passed everybody. Now, because I backed away, there are people that have passed me, which is okay, and they deserve to, right? But at that point, and that's because I just worked harder, stuck with it, didn't quit. And that's a big lesson that I learned in obstacles, is if you outwork them, you'll out-earn them. Period. End of story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've heard Alex Hormozy talk quite a bit about this, as well as, Grant Cardone. I'm a big Grant Cardone fan, where, and I actually mentioned it just in a post the other day that, while it's important to work smarter, you got to work harder too if you really want to achieve the things that you're set out to achieve, provided your goals are not some average goal that
Sure.
you're going to hit just because you keep doing what you're doing, right?
Yep.
So I really love that. I mean, I think there's it's important to have balance, right? In a way, but also to keep pushing and focus on accomplishing the things you've set out to accomplish, right? I don't
Yeah.
think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's very admirable. So I love that. And I'm curious how, this has really helped you become a master connector. How has your experience in martial arts and just overcoming obstacles helped you in some way become, the master connector that you are?
Well, I think it's important first to tell your community and the audience what the master connector means, right? And I know you're the unicorn connector, so there's a meaning I'm sure behind that. But
Yeah, yeah.
so
That's a way better place to start. Tell me more about the master connector. What does that mean?
yeah, so uh, I appreciate that. So number one, I've always had my hands in a bunch of things, and whatever I do, it's always been somewhat complicated, right? So I do business automation consulting. We didn't talk about that, but I do that right now, and it's a somewhat complex. And so people, when they ask you what you do, they want to put you in a cute little box. He's an attorney, she's a CPA, he's a plumber, and I don't fit in that cute box. And so when people ask me what I do, and I would tell them, I'd hear back, I don't get it. I'm like, just call me the master connector, and that name just seemed to stick. But master connector means a lot of things, right? Number one, um, fundamentally, well, when you fight and you spar, you're connecting with somebody, right? So there's that master connector. And by the way, martial arts, fourth degree black belt, it's also known as master. So there's a little pun there, but that's not the main thing behind it. So being a master connector to me means a few things. Number one, it's connecting authentically, right? It's because it's true connection, right? I could have said master networker, but I think number one, I think the generation of today doesn't like that word networker. I think they look at it as a dirty word. But I think it's connecting. It's not really networking, right? So I wanted to talk about connecting. So master connector refers to connecting, and that authentic connection we spoke about, right? So that's a big part of it. The second thing is connecting the dots, right? I love making introductions, and when I get on a call with somebody, and it's funny, there's times when people, anyone that connects with me, I'm going to warn you, if you connect with me, you're going to get a message from me saying, "Hey, let's jump on a call." Okay. And if you connect with me and I accept, I'm going to ask you, let's jump on a call. And some of my messaging speaks about that I have a big network and maybe I can open some doors or make some introductions. And I'm not going to just do that. And it's funny how people are like, "Well, can you make some introductions?" I don't know you yet. Okay,
Mhm.
you want me to open up my network to people to you that I don't know you yet? I mean, you could be an axe murderer. So I got to get to know you. So we got to connect first. I got to feel good about you, and then I'll look to open some doors and make some connections. So the master connector also refers to that. But there's also other ways that connect you, not just to people, right? I could maybe add value. I can maybe connect you to some of my networking groups. Maybe get you on my show, depending upon if you're somebody who we feel like we'd like to have on the show. There's different ways that I could connect the dots. So that's another piece of being a master connector. It's not just having a very large network, which of course I do. 18,000 contacts on my phone, 24,000 LinkedIn connections, and growing quickly. And so there's that piece of it, but it's really more about the first two that to me makes the name the master connector.
Yeah. So, Steve, how do you really connect with people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm not sure if you're referring to the techniques or you're talking about the metaphor of connecting with somebody.
I would say, more of the metaphor of connecting with somebody, not so much the techniques, unless, we're just using a different lingo, but, like when you say, really connect with somebody, or when I do, I'm curious, like, you know, and you kind of answer it by saying, I don't jump straight to what do you do? And there's a reason why I don't really ask that on this show, because then we go down the what do you do path, right? And
Right.
so I'm curious, just what that means. Like, how do you really create that solid, deep connection with somebody that's more than just, what do you do?
Well, first of all, it's a heart thing. You need to come to the table with an open heart, open spirit, and not try to be agenda based, and know that you're coming to the table to add value. And my feeling is, not in an ego way, is whenever if I'm in your life or I'm in a room with other people, your life or the room is better because I'm here. And I think everyone listening to this should feel that way. It's not just me, you know. So that's number one. And I've gotten to a place where I feel that way because I've worked a lot on me, and I've put a lot of good stuff in this brain of mine. You know, I have an incredibly long practice in the morning that I'm proud of, that gets my brain right, including meditation, self talk, spiritual reading, some working out, stretching. There's a bunch of stuff, right? And listening to an audio book and listening to another podcast, and just always putting good stuff in, creative visualization, meditation, all sorts of stuff. So there's putting the good stuff in, right? But so when I feel like when I'm, meeting with you or connecting, I have you, and you need to feel that way too. So it is what we spoke about to a degree, right? So rather than starting out with, the what do you do dance, I'm going to say, hey, it's good to connect. And my feeling is, if you don't know much about the person other than what's written in their profile, what good is being connected? I'd love to hear your story, your journey, not just what you do, but the born and raised, the whole nine. I'll give you my story and journey and go from there. So we're starting on a path of, and some people would say, hey, so then why don't you start? And if they make me start, I'll start, sure. But I want to learn about you. And, I'm reading a great book. I've heard about this book for a long time. And I finally took, I think Cameron had been telling me about it. Cameron's my co-host for the Master Connector show, as you know. And the book is called Don't Eat Alone, or Never Eat Alone. I think it's Never Eat Alone. And I assumed that it was about making sure when you go out to lunch that you take somebody with you. And it's way more than that. The book is way more than that. But there was a lot of great points that the book recommends. And that is, making sure you go out there in ways in which you could serve people and have a heart to help them. And so one is kind of coming to the table, genuinely interested in learning and understanding what that person's about. And, if it's a business related meeting, same idea, going to understand their challenges, their needs, right? I do, as I said, business automation consulting. So there's some business development aspects of what I do, but I'm understanding their challenges and really getting to know what they're about and what they're makes them lose sleep at night and stuff like that. And then once you do that, then you can kind of help. And I always want to end a call after we shared our stories, and I might have to dig in with a few other questions. I always try to ask, it's funny because when somebody says, so I was born in Michigan, I went to, I don't know, Salva Regina, whatever. And now I'm an accountant, whatever they say to me. And I didn't get any of the story. And I joke and I say, so essentially you came out of the womb and you're an accountant. Can you give me a little more of the story, and they get it, and usually, and I get a little more of the backstory. But so just trying to get to know them a little bit more, genuinely interested in them. I might ask if they don't tell me, hey, marry kids, the whole nine, what's the deal there? Just to kind of get into some of that. And, I'm not afraid to ask those questions. There's no agenda on that. I'm not trying to hit on them. That's not the point. But just to get to know them. And again, I'm always looking for 3 to 4 to 5 things that next steps that I can provide them that are going to add value. Maybe it's opening up my network. Maybe it's inviting them to a networking meeting or two. Maybe it's having them come check out my show. Maybe it's a podcast that I know about that they can invite them onto, or maybe it's, someone specifically in my network that I specifically want to make an introduction for or to. And when you do all that, you're pretty well connected to somebody. You're not trying to get on there to sell them something, and I think it's very refreshing. And most of the time, people come away from a call with me and they say, "Wow, that was pretty amazing. I appreciate that." They feel connected. They don't feel pitched or spoken to. I've been on a few calls where, it's 30-minute call, and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And that was the last words I said, and they spoke for 30
Yeah.
minutes. So that's
Isn't
not
that
me.
the best? Don't you just love that? That gives a whole different meaning to the term pitch slapping, right?
Yeah. I have not
That's
heard that phrase, and I'm loving that phrase, though. That's
you
funny.
haven't heard that phrase? Oh man.
I have
Yeah,
not. I know the
pitch
other
slapping.
version of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
B word, but not. Yeah,
yeah.
that's funny.
Oh, that's funny. So I'm curious, we've touched on your show. It's obviously, I've been talking about it like crazy because I'm so excited, And for anybody who doesn't know that is watching, I'm going to be on Steve's show tomorrow, the Master Connector Show. Can you tell me a little bit about that and why did you create it, Steve?
Yeah, I mean it's funny. So I'll rewind the tape a little bit. So here I was on LinkedIn. Got on LinkedIn in 2008, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I started connecting with people, and I started to put some decent positive messages out, and I became the positive message guy for a while on LinkedIn, and then yeah, I started to do a few other things, but I wanted to be a speaker, and I spoke to a good friend of mine, Rob Genovese, and he suggested that if you want to be a speaker, you should think about video. And so I dove in face first, literally, and started creating videos. I created the Fire to Friday Master Connector Tip series. I did 2 years in a row of those videos. It was a short video, and every Friday. And if I was on vacation or away on business or whatever, in my hotel room, I would put that video together. I did it on Friday. I didn't once in a blue moon. I did it on Thursday, but typically did it on the day it came out, and it was fun. But I saw that there was LinkedIn Live, and we had seen all sorts of lives going on, Facebook, Instagram, and I said, you know what, LinkedIn Live, and I heard that people were having some challenges getting on there, and there was an approval process, a vetting process, if you will, and I put my application in, and to my shock and dismay, 5 weeks later, I was approved. So now I had this highly coveted thing I knew I needed to do something with, but I was completely over my head with it, overwhelmed by it. I honestly did not think I was going to be approved right away. So, but I knew I needed to do something with this. So reached out to my network, Cameron. And Cameron had me on his show at the time. He was doing a show called Biz Dev Live. I think he took a break from it, but he's going to be pulling it back. And it was really well done show. Network TV production quality. I was extremely impressed. Told him my dilemma. He's like, dude, I'm trying to get on LinkedIn Live for 2 years. We should collaborate. I was like, I was hoping you should say that. So we partnered up November 2020, created the Master Connector Show. This Wednesday, the episode you're going to be on, Daniel, it will be our 106th episode. It's been amazing. We've had incredible guests on our show. Dr. Dre, the author of the book, The Go-Giver, Bob Berg, authors, ex-NFL athletes, former from some MLB guys. It's been a blast. But the show, honestly, is all part of my overall mission on this planet, which is to be the light. I was in a very dark place for many years, shy and introverted, picked on, bullied, learning disabled, dyslexic, right? I shared that. I was in a dark place for years. And because of the power of mentorship, self-development, networking, and honestly, by the grace of God, I was able to get on the other side of that. And today, my goal is to be on a TEDx stage, to be paid to travel the world, speak and inspire, and be a beacon of light. And the show is a stepping stone in that direction. So that's the show. And in our pillars, I shared earlier in this show here today, and I spoke about 4 pillars, right? Connecting authentically, being a go-giver, others focused, having the grit to overcome obstacles, and the 4th is building a community, growing new connections, and that's the 4th pillar. So it's been blast. It's been amazing. We started out the first probably year-ish, we did like we had panel discussions where we had like 5 or 6 people on at one time, and it was a blast. It was awesome, and the shows were 1 hour. But we got the feeling like people, having an hour commitment was tough, especially in the middle of the workday. And so we shifted gears and went to a 30-minute show. And with the feedback we got was, maybe let's focus in on one person, because each of these people were on, they were amazing, but we could only touch the surface of what each of them had to speak about. So we said, okay, we'll shift gears, and we went to a singular focused show, and got it down to a 30-minute show. Although, as we spoke about it backstage, yeah, it's a little bit, sometimes it goes a little over that, but it's been a blast, and we're having a lot of fun, and we have an incredible community of people that are loyal, come check out our show and blast it out to their community. And so it's been a really amazing experience.
That's awesome. Well, I'm very much looking forward to that. I wanted to ask you, and you just keep hitting so many things that just resonate with me so much. And you talked about speaking and that you want to speak all over the world. And I love that you kind of indicated that you wanted to focus on, being uplifting and having a positive outlook on life. And so I'm excited to, see some of you speaking on stages. I don't know that I've seen anything, recorded. I probably can dig a little bit more to find that. But I'm curious, from a connector's perspective, why do you feel like it's important for connectors to be uplifting and have a positive outlook on life?
I wouldn't say it's connector needs to per se. I believe it's our calling. It's my calling, and I believe if I can empower people all over the world to be that light. I believe we live in a dark world, and there's a lot of challenges, right? We, now the latest news on, the financial crisis dealing with these Silicon banks and what the ramifications of that. And then there's also talks about Russia and China going against us and all these things, right? And so there's a tendency we could be in, suicide rates and mass killings and all these crazy things. And I hate even saying it, but, I believe that it's our responsibility. Again, it's, I've got a spiritual belief, and it's our responsibility to be the light. And what I found, and I saw this is a great metaphor that happened before me. And this is back quite a few years ago, when I don't think the fire marshal would approve this today, but it was in a big conference room, huge conference room with multiple thousands of people. And there was a stage, and the speaker on the stage took out, and there was candles that were given. They were not lit. They were given everybody. Everyone had a candle, and he lit the candle, and he took that candle and lit the candles of the other people, 2 or 3 other people on the stage, and then they dispersed and lit people on the front of the stage, and then it kind of spread. And from it was pitch black. I should have said that. They turned all the lights out. The only thing you could see is maybe the red of the emergency exit, but it was super dark. And within not even a minute, the room was lit, and it was pretty cool. And it was really a great experience. And that's what I believe we can do. And what's interesting about that candle analogy is, when you light your candle and light somebody else's candle, you're doesn't put your candle out. You're not diminishing your flame. You're just lighting somebody else's. And so there's an incredible metaphor there too, where you're just, empowering people and light. And I believe, we could really make a difference if everybody just is the light, and just, uplifts and talks about the good, and be that go-giver and an uplifter. And there's a great movie. It was a little sad at the end, but it was called Pay It Forward. And it was a similar concept, and he drew out on a chart, on a chalkboard or whatever, a whiteboard or whatever it was. And he drew out the, 3, a circle, and then 3 circles. And he started to, draw out what it would look like if everyone just paid it forward. And how that would change the world. That was a science project. And yeah, I mean, I believe that. I believe that if we could just be the light and pay it forward, what a great world this would be if everyone would just be a light to somebody and uplift them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's amazing. Again, just so many awesome things that have just really resonated with me. And I can't even explain them all. That is for sure. But yeah, I I wanted to, kind of give a call out because, this will go out on some of the other podcast platforms. One of Steve's dreams is to travel the world and speak on stages, inspire people, uplift others, and spread his light because it's incredibly positive and just a great thing. And so for anybody listening, I encourage you to check out his website. It's an amazing website. It looks great. It's spiro-global.com, and book him for your next event because why not? If you want somebody that has a great contact list that will bring positive energy. I mean, you heard him as soon as he got on here, just brought tons of positive energy. I think that you're awesome. Anytime I have an event and they happen, I'll definitely keep you in mind myself. So wanted to know, where, so we talked about LinkedIn, obviously a great place to connect with you. Is that what you would recommend people do, is find you on LinkedIn, or is there somewhere else they should go to check out?
Yeah, the easiest way, because, and they could go to stevespiro.com, right? And I think you might have the link somewhere there. Stevespiro.com. I think it's right there. I see it now. Go there and there's a link on that. It's a digital business card, just so you know. If you're going to click it, it's going to say 10,000 cards, but and it have links to the show, links to my speaker website, links to LinkedIn. So it's a great resource that if you just go to remember my name, stevespiro.com, and that'll be easiest. And definitely connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. Make sure you mention the Unicorn Connector Show. For sure. I'd love to know that, you found me through that, this amazing resource. And Sir Daniel Knight, I'm going to call you. We're going to knight you. But anyway.
Thank you. All right, cool. Well, Steve, anything that you would like to leave the audience with? Any parts of wisdom that you'd like to spread across the world?
Yeah, I just want you to know that you're amazing. If you're listening to this, you're amazing. You are incredible. You have incredible talent, gifts. I know there may be some people listening to this and saying, he's just saying that. And listen, I was there too, right? But when you understand that your mess can be your message and your test can be your testimony, you're incredible. You're going to inspire somebody. So just believe that you're incredible. Go out there. Be others focused, right? If you've got challenges, I learned the best way. I've got some incredible mentors in my life. The best way to really overcome your challenges is to focus on helping other people with their challenges, and your challenges just shouldn't go away. So just know you're amazing, and I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. That is a great thing to say. I really appreciate you saying that. And thank you, Steve, so much for being here. I really can't, express my gratitude to you enough. Incredibly valuable, incredibly insightful, and I'm just, thrilled to know you, thrilled about tomorrow's show. So anybody who has been watching this, make sure, your next step is to go to LinkedIn, connect with Steve, and RSVP to the show, because we're going to be, circling back and turning the tables a little bit. So I'm excited for that. And, again, Steve, thank you for inviting me to your show.
Honor.
Thank you for coming to mine. And thank you all for watching. You are incredible people. So have a great rest of your week.